All right, we're live. So today I have BJ with me, and we're just going to talk about stuff. We've cracked some beers. Mine is Corona for the season.
Dragon's milk.
There we go. Dragon's milk.
Hell yeah.
So we've been trying to get on a talk for a little while. He's been a little busy with a newborn baby, so props to that. Human life is great. And basically, we're just going to talk about a couple things. Like lately, I've been trying to work on this idea of the utility of God. And I know I've been talking about that a lot in some other lives and things with other people, but it's an important issue, especially at this time, because a lot of people are acting as though because of all of our knowledge that we need to do away with the concepts of God. And I'm not even sure if that's if that's possible. And then if it is, like I think a lot of these people, like Sam Harris, for example, who try to come up with their theories for morality and everything else, are just like doing the exact same thing that you can do in religion and Christianity, for example, but they just change some of the words around, and just because they're trying to skip out of the
secularize.
Yeah. And by the way, a technical note, BJ is actually looking at me, but it looks like he's not, just because of different areas of his computer screen compared to a webcam. So that's cool. But yeah, I don't know if you want to just like I saw some of your conversations over on the daily discussions a while back, and I thought it'd be cool to have a conversation with you. So I don't know if you want to jump on any of those ideas. And I also want to try to, if we have time, which is a little bit limited, we're going to try to get on the idea of Ken Wilber, which is an author.
We could talk about some of his ideas for sure.
Yeah. So so I don't know where you want to go, but we're just kind of free flowing and whatever.
Yeah, man. I'm just down for a conversation. So on the idea of like the atheist movement, trying to find meaning in the cosmos, versus, the utility of believing in God, or the utility of utilizing the concept of a God or some deity or some energy or force to build your worldview. I think that it's this idea of like a greater force or being in how we view the world is so intrinsically built into our psyche at levels that go so far beyond just what we interface with consciously in our day-to-day lives.
Deeply unconscious now.
Yeah, like I personally have an idea where you as a human being cannot exist without belief.
Right.
And that's something that I speak on a lot. Like, in order to make any value judgment at all, to make any sort of statement about your reality, you have to start from an axiom. You have to start from a place of assuming something, that something is real.
And that's usually unconscious is the tricky part.
Yeah, most of the time it is. And even, if we look at like Euclidean geometry or some sort of, mathematical language to try to describe this rather than just our personal anecdotal experiences, you have to start from somewhere. And the somewhere that you have to start from must be an assumption. And you have to just assume and take it for granted that it's, reality is as it is. And, this thing allows you to make a forward projected movement to a new idea, which will then evolve into another idea and another idea. And so because of that, like fundamentally, I feel that greater truth will come from a place that doesn't exist in your reductive logical process, because your reductive logical process has to begin from already a place that is outside of the context and the domain of that logical process. Otherwise, you'll go in circles forever, because you can break any argument or any idea down into a circular argumentative process. A lot of people will complain about philosophy this way. They'll say, what is the point of philosophy if you can, you'll eventually just start talking in circles, because that's what happens. And when it comes to morality or talking about the nature of reality or anything in our lives, they break down to these circular arguments that are like self-serving, fallacious statements, because that's what it boils down to. And you have to utilize an axiom to move forward, presuppositions. So because of that, fundamentally, I feel like using something like the idea of God to make your arguments is just as valid as trying to do it by reinventing the wheel yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like we're always doing that. So this is from a book I just finished by Steven Pinker.
Oh, nice.
He said
what is it? What is it? By the way, I'm reading a book by him now.
It's called
Language Instinct.
This one's Enlightenment Now.
Okay, that's my next book by him. I was going to read it.
Yeah, I recommend it, although I feel like he almost ruined it by getting too polarized in a couple places, and by just bringing in, like trying to trash Nietzsche by saying Nietzsche was by bringing up some possible anti-Semitic things of Nietzsche. So he's like, oh, forget Nietzsche, like get away from him. Which he's a big defender of the Enlightenment movement and the scientific movement and everything else. But I think he does that just because he feels like
the postmodern movement hates it so much.
He doesn't exactly say why, but I think it's because that the danger, one of the dangers of Enlightenment thinking or a criticism of it is that it can be, or he's also tries to push an atheist worldview too.
Sure.
But in so doing, and this is one thing that Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris talk about, is that the danger is like a nihilistic worldview, or what was the word?
Meaningless. I would call it meaningless.
Well, they say that there's two things that they try to avoid, and one is that you can't have truth, which kind of comes
attributing truth.
Yeah, you can't find truth, which is kind of the postmodern presupposition that gets
everything is relative. To mind. Yeah.
And then the other is just to avoid totalitarianism and dogma.
Sure.
So
even though the Enlightenment was all about that for the most part, I mean, the Enlightenment gave everything. The Enlightenment truly was a beautiful time, and it had its downfalls. To talk, you mentioned Ken Wilber, and we'll talk about Wilber's ideas a little bit. In a brief history of everything, he does give the argument for and against the Romantics and the Enlightenment thinkers and postmodernity, and he kind of breaks it all down from the reductionists, the scientists, the sort of the materialist, empirical thinkers of the Enlightenment, and where their limits are and their limitations lie, versus the Romantics who always want to go regressive and go backwards into the psyche and like become children again, versus the postmodernists who are all about, like you said, there's no absolute truths. You can't interface with truth, and it's all relative and things like that. So I guess as far as what you're saying, I guess this is what you and Jenna were talking about, is what you're saying? Between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, these debates and things?
It's kind of just like an issue that I've been on for a little bit.
You're just riding that wave? Just like trying to wrap your head around it?
Partly because, Jesse, right? Jesse Rogers?
I think so.
He's got that Resurgent Us group, and he's gang.
Yeah.
Anyway, he started a little like chat group that we're gonna start discussing those Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson debates, and that's kind of a big task, because it's deep issues, and and there's, I don't know, there's several people in the group, but I forget the number, but there's at least a handful of people in the group. So I guess I was just trying to get a jump on it, and and it's just a really deep issue of the whole.
Yeah, that's a big conversation topic, though, and it's been going for hundreds of years. I mean, that's something that's been happening. Just talking about that, and there's no way around it. I think the biggest problem, and I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I don't really like Neil that much, but he was on. Yeah, I don't know. He made a statement once that was like, he said something along the lines of, if people are writing books about it, it means that the answer hasn't been found. Usually, there's a trend in science, it's scientism, where if somebody really found the answer, people stop writing books about it. The more books that you find on a subject such as consciousness, it's just it's a factor that proves, or I guess that you could deduce from that the answer is still out, hasn't been found. And this is a discussion that's been going on for so long. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, and this is why I feel like people like Ken Wilber and those kind of thinkers or talkers or whatever, or authors are good, because I feel like where a lot of people get lost or get stuck chasing their tail or whatever,
sure,
is to just say, we need to get away from religion completely.
Yeah,
which was another thing that I kind of didn't. Yeah,
reductive.
Which is another thing that I kind of didn't like in Pinker's book that I just finished, was he's all about being scientific and using evidence and everything. But the thing with statistics, and I believe that, and I respect science and evidence and everything, but it's a tricky thing because
there's a lot to it. Institutions, money, funding.
Yeah, but I mean the scientific, like, here's proof, so believe it.
Okay.
It's tricky, especially like in a book when someone he is one of the better authors who writes that way, I think, because a lot of times it's hard to read those books, not just like they're just more boring compared to books with
they're dry. Yeah, they're dry.
Well, and it's just like I think I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious, where it's just like I hear somebody say, here's a bunch of stats and a bunch of studies and some graphs and everything else, got it? When it's like, the thing with those kind of things is you can take graphs and studies and all that kind of evidence, and you can manipulate it to kind of
no doubt
whatever you want.
Statistics isn't perfect, and science. You talk to any scientist, any practicing scientist, and they'll deny the dogma or the institution that is the scientific community. But truly, I mean, any real good scientist would tell you data changes, facts change,
right?
Because the domain in which actually that's a concept that I do want to talk about. I want to wrap back around and talk about Ken Wilber and his idea on reductionism and reductive philosophies and people's pitfalls, where they start saying, let's throw out religion, let's throw out science, let's throw this thing out, let's throw that out, and they try, they just get rid of everything, and they try to come to truth.
Ken Wilber is trying to integrate them, whereas
someone like Steven Pinker would reduce.
Yeah, he would try to throw out things, and same thing with Sam Harris, at least to a large degree.
A lot of people
religion,
do.
Where I feel like the ultimate ideal, and that's one of the quotes that I posted by Wilber today, is where it's all about
the collective consciousness.
Yeah, and being able to hold the opposites. Yeah. And I've never heard that quote before, but it's always one that, like, a concept that came to mind, where I don't know if I'll pull it up or not, but basically it's like you've got to hold the positives and the negatives, or the light and dark, but then just like with electricity, you've got to have like a grounding principle between them. So there has to be thinkers like that and conversations like that.
Connor Durding and I had one of our first ever episodes on his podcast was about the Hermetic principles, the 7 Hermetic philosophies, the 7 principles of Hermetic philosophy. And one of them is the principle of polarity, which basically states that everything in the manifest universe is existing through duality and polarity, and all things are really just a singular phenomena that's expressing itself in like a variety or a spectrum of ways. And people like Wilber are truly integral thinkers, where if you look at the way philosophy kind of has evolved in the last 200 to 300 years, we've evolved in a reductive path where everyone wants to understand the world by reducing everything down into its smallest, most compact parts, where they separate everything that is from everything that isn't. And then we take those building blocks and then we try to understand the reality that we live in from the most simple aspect. Usually it's material. and then we try to build it back up. So we try to strip everything. So we take ideas, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, biases, experiences, anecdotes,
destroy the whole
and we destroy it. We just say no, none of that. We're going to reduce it all down to atoms, to an atomic structure. We're going to reduce it all down to the smallest parts, and then we'll try to build back up. Yeah. And people like Wilber, if you think like that's akin to atomism of the pre-Socratic philosophy, the atomists. Today, that's if atomism of pre-Socratic philosophy evolved to where we are today, people like Wilber are like the holists of the pre-Socratic philosophers. Right. Evolved to today. What he does, he has a system called AQUAL, or all quadrant, all level, which is a grid pattern. It's a very simplistic, oversimplified way of looking at the world. But this is the best example that a person can give in like a 200-page book. It's essentially a grid pattern, and each quadrant is the I, or the ego, the we, the collective ego, and then the us, which is like the ego dissolution into the collective. And not only is it the I, the we, and the us, but it's like,
then what's the other quadrant?
There's like multiple meanings on the grid that's like all overlaid. Okay. The other meaning, or the other aspect, I guess, is that one quadrant is all physical, like your cells, your atoms, your tissues, your muscular system, the nervous system, biology, DNA, all that stuff. One quadrant is the mind as it emerges out of that. So out of the physiosphere of all the dead matter, biology emerges. So it's like a new aspect of reality that is overlaid upon one that came before it. Right. And so then one quadrant is the mind, and then
this is the concept of holons. I just started that book.
Yeah. So and a holon is a part whole. A holon is that which is a thing in and of itself, but is also a part of a collective. And so when you talk to a mainstream scientist, they look at the world atomistically. They look at it mechanistically, how everything works from a mechanical standpoint. They reduce things. If you were to ask someone, a scientist, point at love, please measure government, they will look at you like, what are you talking about? And then in the same breath, they'll contradict their own worldview and try to tell you that things that you can't measure aren't real. But then you ask them, or that they're not worth really contemplating because you can't verify their true existence, or things like that, things like wild things. But then when you challenge them and you try to say, hey, like, measure government, they're like, what are you talking about? But they'll admit that government exists because they live by its rules. Things like that. But yeah, so a holon, sorry, I'm going on a monologue here.
No, that's fine. I like your monologue. I'm listening.
A holon is a part whole. Right. So and this wasn't Wilber's original idea. He just kind of reskinned it and gave it to people in a different light. Where, again, an atomist would look at the world from the smallest parts and build up. He tries to look at the whole picture at once, all at once, because he looks like you are an individual human being, but yet you are part of a collective group.
Yeah, I was talking with Jenner about that yesterday. Hold that thought just for a second, because I just want to like chime in with a thought that just ties into what I was talking about with Jenner yesterday. Jenner is a good friend, but he's I don't know if he would call. Yeah, I don't know if he would call himself a scientific materialist. But he's along that thinking, and that's fine.
From what I've heard and witnessed from his conversations, and I would say he is, but that's my assumption of him. I don't know him personally.
I believe so, and he was going to be on here. I think something came up, but anyway, a lot of the scientific materialists will. One of the things that they'll try to do in this this conversation about God and the utility of God and everything else. Well, it's not just them. I've heard all kinds of people do it. But especially people that are trying to, find new ways to deal with this idea of God, and they'll be really big on the whole thing of like, no, he's not up in the sky. It's consciousness inside of you. And then he was also giving the example of like, well, it's kind of like you have a devil and an angel on your shoulders, metaphorically, but really it's inside of you. And I wasn't exactly arguing with that, but I think the metaphor, the way that it's usually used, works a little better on the shoulder, at least metaphorically, because it's both embodied and disembodied.
Yeah.
In that it's inside of you, but because, and he made this point, which is true as far as the whole act as if God exists, in that the way that we ultimately do that is we know that we are our own judge. Sure. And we're watching each other, we're watching ourselves, at least unconsciously. And, we're going to have to deal with our future self is going to have to deal with our past self and all those things. And so
your past self actually has to deal with your future self. If you're a quantum gravity researcher.
all those kind of things. And so, we have to remember too, it's like we are judged by ourselves, which is probably our first and primary judge and our most important. But then, we're self-conscious, but then we're not.
So there's an aspect of judgment that's outside of you.
Right. We're not.
But the outside of you is still inside of you.
Right. So we're also judged by nature. We're judged by all of our social groups and peer groups, our family. We're judged by
that's
society.
Definitely a Wilber-esque idea. For sure.
Which is kind of this hold-on thing, which I talked about yesterday at this time-ish. And then later I read, like at night, I read that hold-on stuff as I started that book.
Yeah, the holarchic patterning.
Because it's funny because I was even saying how, like, I have to, like, I'm in Orange County, California, so I have to, in one way, think about the way that my city judges me, Costa Mesa, and the way that the county judges me.
Right.
And I have to think about the way
that
the state judges me.
It's all real, and it's all happening all at the same time.
Which is a lot like almost like a mythical, like a Greek god even. Yeah. Even though you could say it works that way mythically, metaphorically, even if it's not that way, it still works that way just as much, almost as if it were true, because of how that we're judged that way.
Sure.
And like, and then it goes, of course, above that, national and global, everything else. And
that's what Wilber's all about. So, like, to just interject really quickly here.
Yeah.
So to complete the idea of the equal system, one part of it is the physical aspect of the universe. Mm-hmm. Another is the mental as an individual. So the mental plane, or the noosphere, emerges from the biosphere.
Just in the same way, by the way,
it's the mental cognitive aspect of reality. So just like from the physiosphere comes the biosphere, and then from the biosphere emerges the noosphere. And in each of these domains, reality is completely different from the other domains of reality, and they can't interface using the same language, which is one of Wilber and my personal criticisms against somebody who would claim to be a materialist or a reductive philosopher of any kind, or a scientist or things like that. Yeah. Simply because these are different domains that are overlapping in one reality. They may all have a foundational aspect in the physical, but Wilber would argue that they also have a foundational aspect in the spiritual. That the floor and the ceiling of reality, so like the foundation that we all come from, the dead matter, the atoms, the chaos, the probability system of chaos and order, that's the floor. But at the same and so we all come from that in time, but at the same time there's this aspect of mind. There's this aspect of universal consciousness that is also the ceiling, but it's not linear. It's not like this linear process of evolution. It's this weird, crazy, hyperdimensional thing.
Yeah,
and so
it's kind of like that Eye of Providence type thing. That
totally
the pinnacle of the value structure, which we can conceptualize as something like that, as the Eye of Providence, or some other symbolic ways. But even if we didn't believe in God, and even if somehow we just said for sure there's no God, ... whatever, it's good to have that kind of symbology to understand whether there is or not, there is something like that.
Sure, and he even talks about it a bit later. So to finish the equal really quick, so one's physicality as an individual, the other quadrant is the individual as the mind. Then the bottom quadrant is the physical we. So like our infrastructure, our buildings, our architecture, the rituals that we perform together, how we all interact together as a collective in the physical. and then
customs and
customs,
things,
us having this conversation, language, all this stuff. And then he's got the last quadrant, which is the collective us in the mind. So like the meaning of the external. So you've got the external I, the internal I, which is the meaning, the mind, the perception. Then there's the us. So like you could imagine like a bunch of Amazonians doing a rain dance in the forest. So you could analyze it from a physical point of view, like, oh, this is how they get together so they don't kill each other. This is how they get together to exchange goods, so that way they know that they're part of this tribe and not that tribe. This is how they honor their ancestors, so that way they treat old people well and nobody dies. Like you can analyze it in this physical way. But then when you ask yourself, like, what was the meaning of that? What were they actually doing? And they were calling to the gods for rain, and they were doing all of this like spiritual stuff. That's the last quadrant.
And that's a point that that I think we all need to acknowledge more, especially in this coronavirus time. Because, one of the examples Jordan Peterson gives sometimes is how that I forget when Hurricane Katrina was 10 or 15 years ago or whatever.
2001 or no, 2003 or
something like that, about 15 years ago. Or anyway,
a while ago.
Anyway, so I think Jenner might be coming in. But anyway, so one of the points that he makes is I'll get to that. One of the points that he makes is how sometimes fundamentalist Christians, especially, in the South where Louisiana is, they're like, oh, God was judging New Orleans, when in a way that's true even physically, because New Orleans is a city that's below sea level, and they were irresponsible, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, to not build up their dams. Because if they had done that, then a lot of lives would have been saved. So that parallels, and I'm surprised that more people, at least in the sort of like universe of people who kind of talk this way or think like Jordan Peterson type people, haven't brought this up. Is that's a lot of what's going on right now with the whole coronavirus situation, in that we knew this could happen any day, an outbreak like this. And we're actually sort of lucky, blessed, or whatever, that it's not worse than it is. But we were not very prepared. Like, we could have been a lot more prepared, but people want to squabble over a lot. But to say that we're not prepared is sort of like saying God is raining down judgment upon us, but not necessarily literally, but literally in our unconscious. And
that's how we
the
interface
metaphor
with our reality.
Yeah, just like the metaphor of,
call it the archetype of what's happening, how we understand it.
It's like the metaphor of, like, you let a baby dragon become a big dragon. Same thing kind of happened with this. It's like, oh, we knew we had to be more prepared for an outbreak like this, and we didn't get that way, and now we're kind of managing it.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like judgment from God in a way, but whether it's literal or not, it is literal in a way.
And everything is. So, like, one of my personal philosophies that I always say is everything is and everything isn't, and that's a super huge statement. I make that a lot. I'm writing
the
a series of books
of
right
being and non-being.
But things are and things are not, and all things are all other things, and all things are not all other things, and it's really complicated. But to get to the point of the matter without going on a long spiel, is that Wilber, to go back to Wilber as we jump between Peterson, Sam Harris, and Wilber, is he would argue to look at the world holistically. So you would look at this event like coronavirus, and you would look at all aspects of, as best as you could, all aspects of reality. And this is a hard mental gymnastic exercise, because you're trying to view the world through all four quadrants at once. You're trying to view coronavirus from a personal, physical standpoint. What is it? How is it structured? How does it affect the body? How does it affect the actual brain and your system? How has it evolved over the course of time physically? How does it travel? Then you're looking at, individual minds and how we interface with this aspect of reality. Like some people would understand it as judgment, or some people just think it's this biological thing that's happening. So that's the I. Then you're looking at societal impacts, how we're all staying home, how it's affecting our infrastructure, how it's affecting our economy, all of these other things. And then you're also trying to think about what the meaning of this is to the collective, from the collective. And as you said earlier, there's layers upon layers upon layers that you have to work through. There's your local, then your state, then your fed, then your national, then your international. And all this stuff is happening all at once. And it's all this giant, like, bubble wrapped, crazy, silly, stringed up thing. It's not like a linear thing that you can think about. You have to have this capacity to almost multitask the way that you're looking at reality all at once. And that's the nature of an integral thinker. And it's very difficult, but that's Wilber in a nutshell. If I could ever just like put a pin on it.
All right.
What's up, man?
Jenner made it.
What a mess.
Yeah. So
we're just talking.
I don't know if you heard that last part, but what so we're talking about all that stuff. It's a lot of what we were just talking about yesterday, only we're somewhat I'd
summarize by saying what we were talking about is the nature of reductionism and materialism and like physicalism, and like the way that people view the world as reductive, like linear concepts, versus something like an integral thinker like what Ken Wilber, who is a holistic philosopher who tries to look at the universe as a holarchy or a hierarchy of holonical structures rather than very reduced fundamental structures that we build up upon to like recognize and understand and interpret reality. So we're just talking about the difference between those two modes of thinking. And then we talked about coronavirus and Jordan Peterson and God, some other things.
Everything.
Highfalutin shit.
Yeah, there we go. We're being all highfalutin, and I'm actually drinking today.
Yeah, I'm drinking Dragon's Milk.
Whoopee.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One thing too that I'd like to say that this all kind of brings together is we often take it for granted that there's all these layers and everything. You know, like I was saying a minute ago, I did a little review of what we talked about yesterday, Jenner, on some level. But you know, one of the things is I was talking about how, you know, we're judged on every level, city, county, state, federal, and everything else. But we're really seeing that now because, like, as we took apart our economy, so to speak, and our government and everything else, those decisions were made on those levels of, you know, like in California, first we had like 6 counties go into like a lockdown stay-at-home order, and then California said, okay, we're in a lockdown stay-at-home order, and this was one of the first states to do it on that level. And this was like a couple days after the federal, but the federal wasn't a stay-at-home. It was just some guidelines to be careful, basically. But anyway, so that's saying how we slowly took apart piece by piece the economy and the government and the way that we interact with each other, and now we're slowly putting it back together. Like I think just today in Orange County, we're being a little bit rebellious to the state, which I'm pretty happy about. That it looks like they're going to open up a lot of businesses carefully in Orange County where I'm at. And then what'll happen now is we're seeing like these different levels that we often take for granted are putting pressure on each other of like, hey, it's safe to open, let's do this and that. And so it's almost like a war of the gods, so to speak, you know?
Yeah. And Isaac was kind of going towards the direction of talking about how, because we're trying to catch you up a little bit, right? Isaac was talking about, you know, our archetypal means by which we would personify events in reality as we could understand them as like this thing or that thing. Some people may attribute it to some godly force or something. And then I was going to talk about John Gebser, actually, which we didn't get to. So we could start with that now. So we're talking about like people looking at their reality reductively, or, you know, breaking, like as a scientist would, reality down to its fundamental constituent parts and then building up their worldview from the most simple fundamental aspects of what they can perceive and interface with, and then building upwards. John Gebser was a psychologist who kind of mapped out human cognitive growth in terms of huge collectives across time. So it wasn't somebody like Piaget who talks about like the individual growth upon like some short lifespan. Right. Gebser kind of mapped out worldview collective consciousness efforts over the course of millennia. And he described them as...
Yeah, we haven't even gone there yet. We have to also think about
Because that's another level,
history,
right?
all of history, and as we map out our thinking
Exactly.
potentially into all the future and everything else.
Because we're talking about Ken Wilber and his philosophy of integral philosophy, where you try to take like conflicting worldviews and you put them together in a way where you can find truth from all of them in a way that's meaningful and useful. And so I bring up the idea of John Gebser because he mapped out collective consciousness in a way where it's like pre-rational, post-rational, archaic, mythic.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the pre-industrial, post-industrial, modern, enlightenment, postmodern, and then global and wherever directions we're going. Mm-hmm. And Isaac was saying how complicated the world is, especially in the context of someone like Ken Wilber, who tries to describe his philosophy in a way where you're looking at reality from multiple lenses at once, from like a physical I, me, and then like a mental aspect with like a societal, physical, like infrastructure, economy, language, and then like a societal meaning or a societal mental, which is like a whole nother level, and everything's kind of like not neatly put together. It's this big mess of multi-dimensional
and the thing is we
unfolding.
take it for granted as long as it's working. It's like
right, and then and then I guess to finish my spiel here is Gebser gave the worldview map dynamic, and that's like the biggest level of collective consciousness interfacing with their reality, and that's just the final level that I would describe in Wilber's idea of this like integral philosophy. So that's where we are, and we're just talking about random shit like coronavirus or God or whatever in this context of like multi-layered reality that we have to fucking try to tackle if we really want to view reality for what it is, instead of just looking at it from one level or one angle.
Well, I'll just say one thing on that or one quick sort of anecdote or whatever, is that Jordan Peterson sometimes gives this example of how we take things for granted while that they're working, because then it's just this unconscious thing there or whatever. Like we look at a car, and so we kind of will break a car into like a transportation archetype, because if you ask somebody what a car is, even whether they're thinking rationally or materialistically, they'll be like, oh, it's this mechanical machine, whatever. It's this thing that I drive, whatever.
A scientist would.
yeah. So
a reductive, mechanistic visual.
But
an engineer might.
Like an archetypal type view is it's a thing that gets you from place to place.
It's a vehicle of change. It's just a metaphysical, conceptual, physical representation of that which is the universal concept of growth or movement or change. Right. Which is the foundation of all of reality. So you could think about this concept in multiple lights, right? So we're trying to understand these things like God and coronavirus from multiple angles at once.
Well, and so he says, you take it for granted for what it is while it's working. Because if you've got your car and it's always working fine, it's just like there's that thing in your driveway and you sit in it and move around from place to place. But if it breaks down, then all of a sudden it becomes something else, whatever that it is. And it's not only a matter of like, oh, do you have to replace the fan belt or whatever it might be? But it's like, how are you going to, get the money for that? Is the mechanic going to rip you off? Should you? How do you feel about car?
It? What does it mean to you symbolically?
And what all is going to happen? That it's going to, ruin your schedule and everything. So it's like
so
this
many
little
layers
piece,
of meaning.
It's this little piece in your reality personally and collectively that we take it for granted. And then same thing with our immune system and public health world and everything else.
Everything. We were just talking about all sorts of shit. So what's up, Jenner?
Yeah. So you can interject, Jenner, anything that you might be thinking along those lines.
He goes,
oh, wait a second. His mic's off.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you. So if you interjected at all this whole time, we haven't been assholes. Yeah. We haven't been ignoring you.
Yeah, no, my bad. My mic got unplugged somehow.
You're good, man. We can hear you now.
We forgive you.
I'm probably good to dick around for like another 40 minutes or like an hour.
All right. That sounds Fine. So you heard all that, you just couldn't speak. Is that what's up, Jenner?
Kind of. Getting caught up because I'm coming into this in a fairly different place from whence many other.
Quick question, Jenner. Are you a scientific materialist?
I see
on the spot.
This is what I'm saying. I'm a bit of a fucking dum-dum, like in my head. I'm not book smart.
We all are.
I'm very inquisitive. I'm an inquisitive idiot who knows a handful of.
You're aristocratic. You're Socrates 2.0.
Yeah, you guys are using some very big words, which I'm like, what's.
Well, like Sam Harris is a scientific materialist, I think.
So to ask the question in plain speak, when you look at the world, because we were talking about it, right? Nice to meet you, by the way. I've never actually spoken with you.
Pleasure. Finally.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. But when you look at the world, do you view the world through a lens of you're looking at how things operate? So if someone were to ask you a question about value of something or meaning to you, would you immediately jump to a thought that brings to your head how something is operating rather than the meaning of that something?
I mean, no, not necessarily. There's a place for science and rationality and the tangible, maybe in a tangible
aspect.
But
so I guess one more question, and then you can answer however you like. The second question would be, when you're asked about the nature of reality, do you understand your reality through a lens that is purely physical? Like even your mind, even the thing that you're using to think with and look at me and understand what I'm saying and speak back to me, do you believe that has some real aspect, or do you think it's like a projection that comes from something that's more real than that in reality? Is your mind real, or is your mind a projection or an illusion that comes from the only thing that is real, which is your brain and the synapses and the chemicals and everything that's happening inside in the physical sense?
No, it strikes me as kind of there's a word for that.
We don't need words. You can just say however you want to say it. You don't need specific terms.
I mean, the reality is highly subjective and intersubjective. Is there is an underlying physical truth that we probably only see a teeny tiny fraction of. I like to go to mantis shrimp on this for whatever reason. Mantis shrimp can see in like 27 colors. You know what I mean?
How do we know that?
Certainly can't. That's a good question. I think it's probably something to do with the types of rods and cones and orientation of the photoreceptors.
I think a lot of these statements are assumptions as well. Yeah, like these experimental assumptions we make. But but no. So then Jenner's not a materialist. He's not already. So I was wrong.
Not really. No, I'm floating around in the middle because it's like there is a real. Mm-hmm. And then some are like, what's real to me is the subjectivity and intersubjectivity.
Do you feel like there could be a reality in which the intersubjective nature of reality can somehow actually have root that is real in reality? Like that the intersubjective nature of reality itself has some sort of bearing on the real in a way that's very meaningful or foundational?
Question.
Do you feel like that is
no pressure?
I can put it in a different way. I like this. This is a good way to talk, because me and Isaac, we were jumping around talking about all sorts of crazy shit, trying to like make it all mesh. But this is good. We can ask questions and you can answer them.
You're in the hot seat.
I would think of it as kind of overlapping magisteria, perhaps.
Okay.
Where certainly there's probably some overlap there.
Sure.
But
there's always some overlap. But how much, right? To what degree?
It's the to what degree thing. It's non-binary, to use a woke term.
Okay, Jenner's not a materialist. I was wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very scientifically minded and I'm very rational, but there's
it's
more than enough room, especially in discourse, to.
It's tricky because like
Yeah.
I would probably say that what's his name, Sam Harris, is a scientific materialist, but he kind of, what's tricky about him is he like really wants to, put everything in the physical and be like atheist. There's
He's
no God.
a reductive thinker.
Yeah, but part of how and why that he takes the positions that he does is because he's trying to come up with a morality for it all, because
but it's broken already.
Yeah,
it's
already the theme that we're on is that's how I'm like, someone who would act as if there's no God would act less like Sam Harris, who Jordan Peterson said Sam Harris is act as if there's a God, but they would act less like Sam Harris and act more like a Rick Sanchez, for example.
Sure. But the thing is I think that those people, especially like Sam Harris, even though they're highly intelligent, their worldview is fundamentally critically flawed. Because if you think in terms of reductive philosophy at all, you're taking a huge spectrum of this giant complicated mess of things,
right,
and you're pulling it all down and trying to flatten and iron it out so that way it neatly fits one niche, such as a mechanistic
which I think is where he gets stuck. Is that I think, and this is
that it doesn't work.
That whole debate between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris is that Jordan believes that Sam acts as if there's a God. Essentially, it's just
he doesn't. But then he won't admit it.
Yeah,
he wouldn't utilize the language. His lexicon doesn't involve godly terms. Yet he
wants to actively try to deny it, because you would behave a different way if you were for sure. Although it's tricky, and this is where they got stuck for almost over an hour in their second debate. They get stuck because
I would take issue with that too if somebody told me, "Oh, well, you live your life as if there's a God."
Unconsciously.
Okay. No.
Unconsciously.
No.
Well, and I think where they were getting stuck is that what Jordan was trying to say is like a lot of the conversation that we've had today and yesterday, where at least in an unconscious or metaphorical way of like what we're talking about, how we're judged by nature, we're judged by our unconscious, and we're judged by each other in a way that's a lot like in a way that it's a lot like how a God would judge us, like the way that the mind behaves.
It's because Peterson's talking from a level that's here, and then Harris is like here. But this isn't to denote like higher or lower. It's just they're not connecting in the terminology or the way that they view the world, which is why I bring up Jean Gebser and Gebser's mapping of collective consciousness and the stages in history in which general, global, or like sections of large masses of human beings actually view the world through different fundamental lenses, and we can define those lenses in a way that allows us to understand what they're saying when they say it. So I would say Peterson looked at the world through like a pre-rational, mythic, archaic sort of way, where he like connects it to postmodernity and the Enlightenment era. He kind of looks at everything holistically. Someone like Sam Harris may be looking at the world strictly from an Enlightenment point of view, strictly from this particular level. And so if we can map out those particular like interfaces or like those vehicles by which we actually look at the world, and we can strictly define them, we can come to terms in a way that is integral, which is Ken Wilber's philosophy, which is what we were talking about at the very beginning.
Opposites of the same whole, those two guys, because it's not like one is a fundamental sort of rational atheist type person.
They're like amalgams, but to different degrees of the spectrum.
Because it's like if there was the spectrum of like a fundamentalist Christian compared to like a scientific materialist, very rigid, that like that would be the end of the spectrum. Whereas those two are almost together, and they mostly agreed on like 90%. Maybe even like 95 or 99%, although a lot of their language couldn't come together.
Because they're still in different bubbles. They're still in different actual fundamentally different worldview patterns. And so if we can somehow come to a way to define those, I feel like we'll have a lot better of a time actually like coming together and integrating, conflicting worldviews and opinions and ideas of the nature of reality in a way that's really practical. And so that's what my philosophy is, and that's why I'm writing the books.
That's the other Ken Wilber quote I posted today. It's not that there's a single pre-given world and we simply look at it differently. Rather, as
they're a completely different world.
Yeah.
But they're all together. They all are the same, but they're all different.
Rather, as the cosmos comes to know itself fully, different worlds emerge. And the same thing in that little quote is in the middle of talking about how different worldviews don't just look at the world differently, like what we're talking about right now, but they create different worlds and they sort of create different
branch
cultures.
Out. Yeah, so like, and Wilbur talks about the physiosphere literally emerging into the biosphere, which literally emerges into the noosphere. And in each of these new domains of actual, real, verifiable reality, the whole rule set, language set, diction, the way we talk about, the way we interface with, the way we feel about everything changes so drastically every time there's a new emergent patterning. And things are too complicated to look at the world through a reductive lens. And that's one of my major criticisms of anybody who like is just an atheist or like
Well, this isn't, maybe it is, but I don't think of this as a kind of a dry reductionist thing. But if I'm going to have a conversation with anybody on Earth about God, for example, the question is, what is it? What are you talking about? Because this is how I lived most of my life. You have to come to terms. Not understanding what the fuck they're talking about. Because if you're talking about the guy who sits in the clouds with the long white beard watching us masturbate, I'm not down with that that conception of what people think. So when I ask somebody like, what is God? And they're like, oh, in the Bible. And I'm like, okay, well, the Bible's a book. It was written by people. What are you talking? Oh, he created us all. What do you mean by that?
That's not reductive. That's not reductive, though. I wouldn't criticize that for sure.
It's a terms thing.
Terms. You have to come to terms. So, one of my favorite philosophers, he's dead now, but his name is Mortimer J. Adler. It changed my life. Everybody should look up Mortimer Adler and the great books of the Western world. I'm pretty sure, maybe not Jenner, somebody else who came on Connor's podcast has this set and series. But he basically says that you, in order to truly understand someone when you're having a conversation with them, you have to, or reading their book, for instance, you really, really have to do a lot of uphill climbing to come to terms. You have to come to the same definitions. You have to make clear what you mean. You have to define what you mean before you guys can talk about it. And so I commend you for asking those questions. I don't think there's anything wrong in that at all. If you're going to have a debate about something like God, you really have to get to the root of what you're talking about.
Right. As a fundamental thing, what you're talking about, not who, not which. It's there.
Yeah, what?
Whether or not our eyes, our 6 eyes that we have between us, whether or not they all see blue,
and that's why,
in the same way, we all agree that it's blue when we look at the sky.
And that's why John Gebser's worldview mapping is so important, because he actually breaks down the difference in large groups of people across history and tries to show in a way that's verifiable and reproducible that these people view, like, your blue might be green and then his blue is red and his blue is yellow, and then we can prove it over and over and over.
And we talked about that yesterday, and I made the point that sometimes I might look up in the blue sky and say, oh, that makes me happy, and then Jenner might be right next to me looking at the same exact blue sky, and for some reason it'll make him sad. But
if you can agree that it's blue, and if you can agree what happy is and sad is, then you can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But if you don't come to terms, then you can't.
Right. Well, okay, so one point on that, and this is, I think, where those guys get stuck in their debate, is really it comes down to, well, it also, I think maybe more than definitions, it comes down to values, which is largely because, okay, let's say you go through the world and you find out there's all these people that believe in, there's a beard guy in the sky watching you masturbate or whatever, on some level, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and maybe there's some utility to believing that on some level, whether it's true.
There's
or
value
not.
in that. And then this person would argue that there's no value in that. We can find ways to have more morality without that.
Right. But if you can, the reason I say probably values, like it's good to understand the terms, but the values might be more important, because on one hand you want to say, okay, what happens by you believing that? If only good things come out of that, then
how can you have a discussion about value if you're not talking about the same thing though?
Yeah, okay, so it's good to understand the terms, but so it's like if I say, okay, Bob thinks there's a bearded guy in the sky. Fred, my other friend, thinks the same thing, but in a more metaphorical way. He tries to act as if God exists. And then Joe, random imaginary person, thinks that there's no God. But can they all agree on the same values? Which, for example, would be like not killing each other and free speech and things like that. If they can all agree on a lot of the same values, then it's like, okay, they can coexist. They might
right. But what if they differ on what value means to them? Like, what if they differ on the definition of value?
Well, that's why I say it's good to figure out what those. There's like
you have to come to terms.
Like a hierarchy,
you have to.
There's a hierarchy of values. So, like one of the foundational ones might be no violence, and on that same level, free speech. And then the pinnacle, to some degree, might be like the eye of providence, whether that's a real God or a.
What I mean is, like, what if? I guess I'm arguing that like coming to terms is more fundamental than value.
Yeah, well,
because
I'm not saying we don't want to come to terms. It's like fine, come to terms, but
I argue that's
as valuable or more is what the values are. So in other words, if I say, okay, you and you believe this and this, and you believe this and this, and we've got our terms worked out, cool. But what values are we working towards? So
that's an emergent pattern. I feel like value is an emergent pattern that comes from coming to terms and understanding reality in an objective way, where we understand that it's an intersubjective process and we're trying to find objective or maybe not. I don't even want to bring that in there. But
Sam and Jordan were trying to get, but even after the 8 hours, never really did.
Because with Peterson, what he does,
They were doing this. They're at the top of big towers, and they all have their own towers that they literally and they're lobbing shit at each other, and they're missing the ground. We need to come back to the fucking ground, people. And this is why anytime I talk to somebody about any of this stuff, it has to be on the ground. Because if you're propped up on your own tower of books or whatever, this is what these other people think. I'm really more interested in what you think, and this is why when I approach philosophy, I approach it like finding a seashell or something. I guess when I get into some of these ideas, because it really is the process of doing it or not doing it. There is this element to philosophy that is kind of ivory tower. That's kind of like you have to sit atop a mountain of books to even be able to have this conversation. And I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. I take much more of the ancient Greek agora bathhouse type approach.
Sure,
which this is for everybody. This is a process for everybody, and we have to speak to everybody.
It's true, but the world is so much bigger. Billions of people, and which ones do we listen to?
Yeah, the world is so much bigger and so much older. Exactly like Isaac is saying, the world's so big. I mean, we'll never be able to get to the ground with everybody, so we have to do some degree of work. We have to get to some ivory tower level.
Well, it should be.
I think you're misunderstanding what I mean by taking it to the ground, though.
No. I agree with you. When I have conversations with people, if it's going to be a meaningful, real, actual debate or whatever, we have to come to terms. And that's what I mean. Like, we have to talk about what we mean. We have to talk about our definitions. We have to look at the world from the same worldview. I have to define the structure by which I'm actually interfacing with my reality, and you as well, which is why I asked you some of the questions that I did. So that way I can kind of understand where you're coming from. So I I can structure my thoughts in a way that I know that you can interface with, in a way that would be meaningful to you, so that way you can speak back to me that in a way that you may or may not know is meaningful to me, because I'm trying to get to the ground with you.
And
I agree.
I agree. On this note, I would say that what gets confusing too is most of the time we can't really convince people of something very meaningful. But some people might disagree with that, but I would say it's because people have to convince themselves. And so that's why I say what we want to do is figure out what their position is, try to see if we can come to terms on value. And then if we're to terms on value and, living in the world together, like we're not going to kill each other and we have free speech, then eventually, like whether I'm either one, like if I'm an atheist or I'm a Christian or whatever else, or I'm figuring it out like we all kind of are, I don't need to convince the person to change, because if my idea is better, I believe that person will change anyway at some point.
It doesn't matter, right? So it's kind of like the idea behind like nonviolent communication, where when you're speaking to someone, you're speaking to them based on their needs or their values. So you come to terms on value, and you look at their values, and you try to like articulate those through your actual language that you use. What I was going to say earlier is I think that the reason why Sam Harris and Peterson can't ever really get there, even though they try, is because of the nature, for one, of Sam Harris and the way he actually looks at the world, but also Peterson, the way that he speaks to people. He will take words and redefine them to fit his own, I guess, his own corpus. He will take any concept and redefine it, and then he'll argue that to the death. And then people are like not talking about the same things anymore.
Yeah, or
he's using the word.
Or the other way that they got stuck is he really wanted Sam Harris
General,
to
hold on. What were you going to say, Jenner?
Yeah, go ahead.
To that?
I don't know. I'm enjoying this, but it's a million miles an hour. I think the biggest problem, okay, because we're thinking of this top down. We are trying this in this conversation from my subjective viewpoint. We're thinking of this top down, which is kind of backwards. We need to be thinking of it bottom up, and that takes largely. It is both, but to be able to get on the same page, and the reason that Sam and Jordan can't get on the same page is because they're coming top down. You really need to start at the bottom and go up, and that requires dropping a lot of labels and kind of starting from scratch.
Sure.
In a sense, you need to drop the labels. And talk about what you're actually talking about instead of what you think, or this encapsulation of this idea. Oh, this is encapsulated in this philosophy. This is what this person thinks. This is what that person thinks. And when I talk to people, I'm very much more interested. If I'm talking to someone specific, I'm much more interested in dropping all of the filters and all of the bullshit and all of the labels, and actually just getting to know you and what you actually think about this thing. It's a level of really personal respect. It's respect for the self, and it's respect for the other, and in a sense, that is respect for the sacred, as Connor might say.
Truly. So as a question though, that's perfect in one-on-one conversations. You're intimately getting to know the ideas and the mind of another individual human being who you respect, and then you both share ideas and you both grow. How would a person effectively do that to a collective or for a collective? Or how do people who have never met in real life interface with each other's thoughts?
You kind of gotta play this is a horrible framing, but you kind of gotta, it's the lowest common denominator thing. We are all monkeys, okay? We all poop. We all pee, we all eat. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You kind of got to take
think a lot of the same way.
Well, it's actually that's not actually technically true, because people with various medical conditions might not poop. Well, I guess they do, but maybe not the same way that we do. But you get what I'm saying. It's like we need to get to the fundamentals of shit, to the bedrock of shit, and then go from there.
No doubt. Which, in my opinion, is when I say it out loud, it's coming to terms. That's what I say to anyone that I ever debate with or anything. So I agree with you on that. On the battlefield of ideas, whether or not you're debating or having a friendly conversation or inquiring or whatever, you have to get to the foundation before you work your way up. But I don't think that we should disregard or throw out completely the labels and the filters, because those are all really existing things that exist in the world. very many people look at the world through those filters, consciously or otherwise.
Right.
And we have to define those, and I think we owe it to ourselves and the greater conversation as a whole that we're partaking in, because we've only been alive for less than 10, 20, 30,000 days, and we're trying to have these ideas that are these giant ideas that have been, uttered across time, that everyone's kind of involved in. We really should take some time to understand and climb those mountains. But I do agree with you that when we're speaking,
when I said drop the labels, that was not a hey, no, where nothing means anything. I think we get too caught up in that part of it,
like
and we miss the mark. We miss the actual mission, which is understanding.
I agree.
We want to understand each other, and if we're talking past each other, or over each other, or under each other, or around each other, we're not doing.
I like the picture that Jenner drew. That picture that he drew on his paper was perfect.
Scribbly.
I mean, I really like that visual. Like, truly,
you're a visual guy.
I'm not a scribbler, but that's what especially the Sam Harris Jordan Peterson thing.
It's true
that it was difficult for me to listen to. Honestly, it was incredibly difficult for me to listen to, and the idea of participating in something like it sounds even more difficult, because they weren't. It's not just that they weren't seeing eye to eye, and that they weren't necessarily seeing in the same colors or using the same language. Is that there was a fundamental lack of
respect.
It is in a sense, respect for the self, or respect for the other, respect for the sacred. They're talking over each other. They're talking past each other, and. I love Sam.
I'm not each other's followers too. Is the issue?
Yes.
It's
because we are trying to translate this into language that the plebs can understand, and that
which is so fucking difficult. Crazy. It's another part of the holarchy. It's another aspect or layer that we have to fucking deal with when we're trying to really make impactful change in our reality. It's so fucking hard.
Yeah. That's where you guys need people like me and Joe Rogan to kind of put it through the dum-dum filter into poops and fart jokes that the everyday person can grab onto.
I love how Joe Rogan always reminds us that he's a dum-dum.
He does. It's almost podcast, man.
And that's the best. That's the best. He's very self-aware. He knows. He knows important. That he's not hot shit. He's very he is hot shit, but he doesn't act like he's hot shit. Whereas you look at Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, they very much know they're hot shit, and they act like it. It's kind of like they lost that part of the poops and farts. They lost the poops and farts. If I have to encapsulate that, you guys lost the poops and farts. Remember the poops.
Hey, man, I still take pisses, bro. I got to go now. This dragon milk is going through me.
All right. All right. 2-minute break.
Yeah, well, I got to, man, I got maybe another 20 or 30 minutes. I can just
break and then wrap it up for like 15 minutes.
No, I'll just hang out. I'll hang out.
Write it out.
I want to hang out for hours. I'd love to hang out for hours and bullshit, but I got to go soon, probably.
Yeah, no problem.
We should do it again.
Pinch it off. Squeeze it out, bro.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a grown up. I'm an adult.
Tie your tubes.
I'll just get a stone or something. I'll deal with it later.
Okay. Sure.
Or I'll get stoned. Who knows?
There you go.
Gosh.
Another way.
I'd like to do that.
I haven't smoked in so long. I moved to a state where it's totally completely illegal, and my wife is very not trying to, get me arrested now because I have a child and things.
Oh, so. It's illegal or legal there?
Very illegal. I live in Idaho now, in Boise.
Where were you before?
They don't have medical there, right?
Washington, in like the Olympia area of Washington State.
Oh, okay.
No, there's no medical here. This will probably be one of the last states to legalize, if ever.
They didn't even decriminalize. It's still illegal.
No, they're high. It's like felony charge for like a gram of pot, dude.
Yeah, throw you in jail. It's kind of Arizona's kind of just almost as bad.
Yeah.
There
is a medical structure here, but it's just fucked.
It's just bullshit. They take your rights and take your gun rights away. You're fucking.
Yep.
They're like, oh, you need medical cannabis. Fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. That is space for a top down solution.
Yeah.
Where we do need the people at the top to go, okay, Can we all get on the same page about weed? Can we all say like weed's not that bad? It's not a Schedule 1 substance. Can we all agree on
somewhat
that?
on all these topics?
Mushrooms, DMT, mescaline. Sorry, Isaac, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say on these same topics, I do enjoy. I don't know if we would almost call it the theater of our democratic system or whatever. But watching,
you're a Jungian.
Yeah, but watching this whole with medical marijuana and some other things that are going state by state, I feel like that's how it should go, rather than just like the federal saying, "Hey,
I'm libertarian at heart. Fuck the feds, dude. Bigger state government. Let's go."
Yeah,
it is
because you look at the civil rights movement, okay, and I'm encompassing everything in the civil rights movement. Okay, it was a bottom up thing. It was like the people,
for sure.
The eradication of slavery, the suffrage of women, marriage equality. These were bottom up, ground up movements. And if the ground comes far enough up, it requires a top down answer from on high.
Balance.
This is Nancy Pelosi's bullshit from the last 24 hours is great.
Let's not go that way.
Everybody's demanding UBI. We want UBI now. And let's go. Let's get doing the bottom up grassroots thing. And they're like, we need this, and then. It took that, seeing the rise of everything, for her to go, okay, I might consider that. And now that is on the table as a real thing. And that's an example of this.
Getting into the weeds of politics right now. That was not... No, you're good. You're good.
I was using metaphorically
as an example.
The speaker of
metaphorically for the metaphysical aspect of reality being a top-down and bottom-up, grassroots grown and pedestal ivory tower thrown shit down from the shit monkeys. It is a balance, and finding that balance is really important. And so to bring it back to the beginning of the conversation between me and Isaac before you arrived, Jenner.
Come on.
That's why I value Ken Wilber, and why I feel like he's changed my life as a thinker, and me myself as a philosopher, as I'm writing books currently trying to change the world in a way that I feel is valuable. It's all about that. It's all about going from the bottom up and the top down at the same time. Like partitioning your actual mental capacity to do two mental functions at once in a way that you actually view the world. And it's very difficult. But that's what I wanted to talk about with Isaac and you. And that's why I was asking you those questions about whether or not you were a materialist. And in the very beginning,
it's like asking me if I live my life as if there were a God. I'm like, well, what exactly do you mean? Do I act as if I'm being judged every moment of the day by something? In a sense, yes, I do.
I wouldn't have asked that question.
In a sense, yes, I do. I think I am being watched and judged every second of every day by the most important judge of my ethics and my morality and my character ever. It's in here. It's me. I am the judge. And I keep tying this back to the duat and the feather and the heart, in the ancient Egyptian underworld. It is more like that. It's not an up here.
You don't get to go to the field of reeds.
My life? Yeah. Oh, I'm totally going to the field of reeds. I'm totally going. This is another externalities. Maybe that's not the right word. An external
words,
thing,
man.
It's
fuck words.
Fuck words, man. Fuck words.
Postmodernity. Fuck words. Whatever you want.
Jeez. It is.
Make grunting sounds.
Yeah.
We'll get it.
Good.
Yeah.
Flinging poop. I mean, it's weirdly, that is kind of where we're actually heading because of the lack of just this basic process of what we're doing right now, trying to understand each other, talking to each other, and sharing.
It's really unfortunate. It's crazy. Consumer culture and advertisements and media and distractions and all this crazy shit, man. People are just not down to have a conversation. I think the biggest problem, and I know I'm like taking it away from what you were saying just now, I think that comes from people not knowing how to have a conversation with themselves anymore. People are so distracted that they don't have a moment. Like, people are literally afraid to be with themselves and their thoughts for 10 minutes. Like, if you're not having a Facebook post to read, if you're not reading a book, if you're not watching a movie, or if you're not fucking listening to something on the radio, like, you have to be stimulated.
Protecting yourself from your own unconscious.
Exactly. People aren't okay with spending time with themselves. They don't know what that means. And if you don't know what yourself is, if you're not comfortable with self, you don't love self, you can't. You're like a fucking wasteland trying to trying to give water to your people, and it just doesn't work. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I frame this as the war of one, and we're all caught in it in some way or another. And the war of one is how I'm going to start the conversation about mental health on my show.
Yeah, it's all from you.
We are our own worst enemies, people.
Yeah.
Your worst enemy in the world lives inside your head and treats you like shit all the time and tries to convince you that you're shit.
Savior in a way.
Truly.
Get to know yourself. Be your own boyfriend is another Mindwave thing. Hashtag.
Yeah, Isaac makes posts all the time about the shadow and the Jungian archetype of like the evil in the self and Peterson and all that shit. And I always try to tell people, if you're going to change the world, just like Peterson says, like I tell my friends, dude, if you can't stop doing something as small as smoking a cigarette, or if you can't do something as small as not talking to your significant other in a way that makes them feel shitty, like if you can't change a very small aspect of your own life, how are you going to change anything? And we all spend so much time trying to change the world, and change really starts within the self, man.
That's such a meta reality that people they're intentionally neglecting. So if they're ignoring to quit smoking that they know they should do, if they're ignoring be able to talk with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever that they know they should be able to do, well, that's how a lot of the posts that sometimes when I do get into politics, I'm like, people are trying to project their shadow onto the president and other people to ignore their own devils. And we talked about that a little bit.
Truly. Yes, they're distracted. They're entertained.
If you, rather than doing that, sort of do the opposite, clean your room, quit smoking, whatever, you then learn how to, this is really big, Peterson and Carl Jung too, is you learn how to overcome your own devils, even metaphorically, and then you can help others do the same. Not just the literal overcome smoking or whatever, but all kinds of devils.
Not unconscious though. Although you're totally right, and I totally agree with you. Like when people are unconscious of themselves, that's a huge problem. But when you are conscious, when you want to make a change and you can't because you're whatever pathologies or neurosis has developed in you over time, and you're not prepared to look at it, and you don't even know how to metacognitively break it down because you're so distracted, you haven't gained the skills, you haven't been introduced to the method or the mode of thinking to where you can do these interpersonal exercises to make any change.
We just always want to do the easier thing, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that's how we are. We're people. We like the easy road usually. No, unless you're fucking Catholic and you like to whip yourself in the fucking back. Like there aren't very many people that are willing to rip their own balls off just for the sake of it, of being quote unquote better for whatever that means. But
that is a big issue. Is the issue of sacrifice, and that's taking it too far literally. And this is kind of a thing that Jordan Peterson gets into a lot too, was where sort of like the archetypal hero isn't so much, like a James Bond or whatever. It's more of a person that will willingly accept the suffering of life. And it's not, sometimes I think it goes too far on the whole life is suffering thing, but it is in that.
But it is. Manifestation is suffering.
Well, it is in that it's not as bad as sometimes it can look, but to life
fundamentally it is though. Metaphysically it is.
Well, especially to be successful or to achieve things that you want, you're going to have to choose your suffering and go through your suffering. Only that helps you get to what you're sacrificing for, whatever that it might be, whether it's a career or a relationship or to better yourself. But you become better in the process, which is something Jenna and I talked about a lot yesterday. Is there's not only the physical reality when we act as if God exists and some of those metaphorical things, maybe, but then there's also the internal thing that's happening.
The noosphere,
right? You don't only accomplish your thing of having a clean room. Like a clean room is an archetypal thing because, especially a room, because.
You don't have to even.
It's also a goal. It's a lofty goal because Jordan Peterson himself doesn't even have a clean fucking room. People, let's not deify him. here.
Oh, no.
I think this is a big mistake, and I'm not calling either of you Peterson bros, but this is the Peterson bros. The one that they mistake is they kind of deify him in a way, and they take the message of clean your room. But
anybody
he missed the point, because Jordan's room isn't even clean. That's kind of the point. He's caught in the war of one in a crazy way. He has substance abuse problems and mental illness. You know,
do you listen to Alan Watts, Jenner?
I am familiar with Alan Watts, sure.
He gives the example of like rishis and gurus and like Hindu like gurus who Westerners always have this false idea where you have to be perfect and you can't make any mistakes. But most of the time these gurus smoke or they have sex or they drink alcohol, and everyone's like, wait a minute, I thought you were this godly, like pious and incredibly enlightened individual. And it's like, that's where people get it wrong. Exactly.
You missed the point. I like to tie this back to Jesus a lot too, because I'm not Christian, but I'm culturally Christian. But I love to tie this back to Jesus, because if
JC.
For real, it's like you missed the point. If you're worshiping him on the cross, you kind of missed the point.
It's like the Buddha.
Oh, yeah.
It's like being a Buddha.
This is kind of Eastern philosophy, isn't it? It's just like
that's true. They get stuck on the suffering aspect where. I feel like
the Jews take the middle path.
Yeah, well, the right thing is to take the resurrection, because the good news or the gospel isn't that Jesus died; it's that he resurrected. And the same thing with us, which is metaphorically / literally that we can be resurrected in a consciousness, growing, evolving way.
Yeah, totally. And the collective consciousness of your union, or the noosphere if you're Wilbur, or the fucking or the Akashic record if you're a New Age Egyptologist.
Yeah, it's always evolving. Like that's the only sort of human evolution we've been able to observe. I'm not an evolution denier, but
has anyone here smoked DMT or experienced ayahuasca?
Nope.
I've had Molly a couple times, but that's about it.
No.
I tried shrooms. I did not like it.
Okay.
I like being in the driver's seat of my own mind. I do not like taking the passenger seat to my own mind. So
I'll tell you that if you ever come across,
I did have some experiences though with Molly. At least
Molly's not going to bring you to that place. But if you find like MDA, it can be.
Can you what is Molly? Can you play somebody?
MDMA, methylene.
Okay,
so methylene deoxymethamphetamine. MDMA is it's an upper drug. It's. Have you ever heard of ecstasy?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, Molly, street name for the pure compound, which is ecstasy. But when people take ecstasy in the street, it's usually cut with other drugs, and it's dirty and it's gross. And you'll for 3 days because there's methamphetamines in it. Even though MDMA is a derivative of amphetamine, it's not methamphetamine. It's methylene deoxymethamphetamine. So it's different.
So the way that it affects Coke thing.
Yeah, it's crack and Coke's different though. Coke is literally crack, but Coke is salt, so you can insufflate it or inject it. Crack is a free base, so it's the same drug, but it's basic or acidic, and so you take it in different ways, and it affects you in different ways.
Yeah, this is way out of my realm. Jenner does not do drugs. Don't do drugs, kids.
You're good. Nobody do drugs.
Cool kids.
Molly is a psycho. It's a psychoactive compound, but it doesn't make you hallucinate visually or auditorily. It makes you feel heightened states of emotion. It makes you very talkative. It makes you very interpersonal. You want to share things with yourself. You feel everything. It's like imagine how you feel. It's very sensual. Imagine how you feel like when you sneeze and it feels really good, or like you bust a nut, or someone's playing with your hair. Like imagine like those things: sneezing, orgasming, having your hair touched, giving a back massage. All that doesn't touch it. How it's like a spiritual, emotional, physical, all at once, like extreme overload of just love and like paradise and happiness and.
It'll depend on the person and what they're going through, and
it depends. But it's very
all those things.
It's very like euphoric. It's a drug that is pure euphoria. But something like DMT, though, if you were to ever experience DMT, you stay in the passenger seat. Okay. If you were to drink alcohol and you feel inebriated and you're not the same person. If you smoke weed, you're not necessarily the same person. Things change. You may become more paranoid, or you're dull, or you can't necessarily do math because you're too busy focused on some shit and you're giggling or whatever. DMT is like taking a sip of water
Okay.
in terms of how it affects your conscious awareness of self, but the visions and the feelings will take you places that are absolutely just...
I've heard Robert Sapolsky, who's another scientific materialist, talk about those drugs, and he says literally what's happening on a biochemical level is the chemicals that are going between your synapses, the hallucinogens. Yeah, well, the hallucinogens.
It connects synapses that wouldn't normally.
Yeah,
sometimes.
But it's mainly that the chemical that kind of takes the place of your neurochemicals, and then what happens is, because that happens, your normal hearing, where you normally going to hear voices and see figures, is replaced by this other thing, and then you totally think it's real. But at least in a scientific materialist way, they're saying, "Oh no, it's just because your neurochemicals are
you're misinterpreting like sense perceptions and things." But I disagree with that on certain fundamental levels, because the serotonergic drugs such as LSD or DMT, or even something like MDMA, they all do operate very similarly. Psilocybin mushrooms, they're all serotonergic, but there are certain psychedelic compounds like salvinorin A, which, if you've heard of Salvia divinorum, which is like a legal drug that a lot of people tripped on. It's a tryptamine, lasts like 10 to 15 minutes. You smoke it, it's a dissociative. You completely lose touch with reality for like 15 minutes, and you come back and you're completely...
Man, there was something. I smoked salvia once, and I don't even remember we were at like a pool, like a neighborhood public pool that was like gated, and it was a quiet little neighborhood, so you could like sneak in there at night. You could jump the fence, or if you lived in the neighborhood, you had a key or whatever. And you'd be the only thing there. And I remember smoking salvia. The one time I smoked it, and I was like, yeah, it's not really for me. There's something about panda bears and cookies.
So most people don't like it. At lower doses, it can be weird. At higher doses, it completely will like obliterate you and your consciousness. But something like that drug doesn't affect you through serotonin in your brain. It actually affects you at a cellular level across the entirety of your whole body, which is super weird. We don't know a lot about these drugs, but all I can say is, if I just wanted to bring up DMT because you said you as well as my wife and other people that I know, they don't like to give up control, and it's really scary. And you need to be in control of yourself, and you just have to be the operator of your own vehicle. DMT, at least NN-DMT, which is the one that like Joe Rogan talked about a lot. There's 5-methyloxy-DMT and all this other types of DMT, which is very like crazy different. Sonora and Desert Toads and shit. But if you take the mainstream DMT itself, you will be you. You could do math in your head. You could fucking sing a song that you remember from your childhood. You could be talking to your neighbor who's next to you about like what you had for lunch yesterday, all the while your eyes are closed and you're fucking completely in this God realm where some crazy shit is happening, and you're still there. Like, you're still you. You don't go anywhere. So if you ever get the opportunity,
those are kind of blunt for chemically. It's I'm very apprehensive about fucking around with my brain chemistry, because there are many. I mean, I say as I drink.
Yeah, as you drink liquid.
There are blunt force instruments that you can take to your mind to change how it works. I am much more like the mind. The mind is the tool. The mind has all of the power, and you can actually simulate. You can experience the same things without chemically inducing them, like a caveman club.
Oh, come on, man. Okay, get this though. So I agree with that, right? Everything is already there. The entirety of the machine in its all function is in your head. You don't need a drug necessarily, but
you can get there through mindfulness, kids.
You can, right? If you're a new age practitioner. But here's the thing. Why in your brain are there synapses? Why are there neurological openings for agonists to come in and affect your brain in a way? Like, you would think evolution, through an evolutionary process, if there were not some higher dimensional or across, as we're speaking, multiple layers of reality, purpose or function between things, for a human brain to have the ability to ingest a compound that will never come into contact with it forever and then have an effect on it in such a profound way, how throughout time and history has it come to be in a way that's not a cheat code? Like, well, it's not necessarily...
Ayahuasca has gone back probably, 1,000 or 2,000 years?
3,000 at least. So, but yeah. But that's one thing that always gets me, because I'm like, okay, if I can pick a mushroom off the ground and eat it, and then it actually does things to my brain that isn't necessarily coincidence. It could be. We could argue that, but we could also argue that there's an evolutionary key. Like, it's a key that unlocks a door in my brain.
And on this topic, if you look at how it was used, at least ayahuasca and some, I'm not like an expert on it, but if you look at how it was used in medicine men and shamans, that goes back, thousands of years at least. And the way that it was largely used is
to commune with the dead.
Well,
that's what ayahuasca was
but
for.
It was mainly used for their tribal leader, medicine man / and/or shaman, to have that sort of authority of the religious leader of the tribe. So that, okay, that guy is in touch with the dead and the animals and nature and whatever.
Yeah, that's a cultural thing. That's the cultural purpose behind it. One of them.
Right. So,
but it's like one thing that I wrestle with.
I would just say that it's probably that it's just like even in the church, maybe in some other organizations, you want certain people to be at a higher level spiritually, / cognitively /
that's like
we do with people.
That's the cultural aspect of it. But one thing that gets me all the time is, like, over the course of billions of years, how is my brain that's here in this one moment, based off of this DNA structure that has been around for a lot longer than me, have the ability to interface with these items that have nothing to do with my actual biochemistry at all, that I'll never have come into contact with in my whole life unless I picked it up fucking 5,000 miles away and ate it, and then it actually has a profound impact on the way that my
humans, your progenitors, our ancestors, were here for a long time. And it took a lot of them wandering around in the forest and eating shit off the ground. And that's how we figured out which mushrooms make you go loopy and which mushrooms make you go home and which mushrooms fucking kill you.
How come we can create a completely alien psychedelic compound that doesn't have any real relationship to something that already exists, like an analog of LSD becoming LSA or fucking like LSD becoming fucking 2CB or some shit? We create a completely brand new psychedelic compound, and then it operates on the brain in a way that's never. I guess what I'm getting at is
we're discovering the architecture, and we can flip switches. We're discovering the architecture of the mind. Very humbly, we know very, 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 very little overall. But we know enough to push specific buttons, flip specific switches. And I think I am of the mind that chemicals, you can certainly do that with chemicals. I would be much more like, hey, put me in a thing and like put a little hat on me and like magnetically stimulate certain parts of my brain. Let's flip the switch though. The switch is that way. I'm not one of these people who's
that's almost a so. But then that brings me back. But now it's like, man. But now I want to say you're a materialist, but you're not. But the thing is like, okay, let's
say that I'm anything but Jenner. I am Jenner, motherfucker.
Yeah,
I'm nothing else.
Yeah, fuck words.
Fuck words.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back though. Like, hypothetically speaking, if there were to be a drug that we could objectively ensure that human beings have never ever experienced before, but let's say like that drug came about before human beings ever came to emergence on the face of the planet Earth, and then we interface with that drug and it flips these switches on and off or whatever because we're this hyper complex machine, the fact that that is a reality, that can occur, makes me feel like there's this higher dimensional sort of interconnectedness between aspects of this reality that we live in a way that we're all interconnected to this sort of progenitor like event or series of events in a way that's
this gets into the subject of religious experiences, and that sometimes people have real deep religious experiences and sometimes there's different
many
words for them. Yeah, I've had several, and some of those type of things can come in a chemical induced things, and sometimes it can come through meditation type things or prayer type things,
which we can always reduce. Which we always can reduce back to
happening. It's just a different source.
But and that's one of the arguments of the physical materialist philosopher. But a really good book to read actually on this whole idea of what Isaac's getting at and what we're all kind of talking about is William James on the Varieties of the Religious Experience. Like, that is a fucking phenomenal book written by William James, philosopher, 1800s. Great book.
He's important.
But yeah, it's just wild. It's something I wrestle with a lot because, like Jenner, I'm always going back to, there's a physical connection, my brain, there's my body, this is this thing that's happening, and it's all subjective. But then I go back to like Wilbur, who, it's like, okay, well, the floor is physical reality, but the ceiling is spirit.
We're talking about drugs and such things, or
yeah.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that opportunity to plug the Varieties of Scientific Experience, a personal view of the Search for God by Carl Sagan.
Okay,
that's a good. Carl Sagan's good too.
If you guys
I don't have that book in my
book,
library. I don't have it. No,
the Varieties of Scientific Experience is phenomenal. Everything Carl and Julian ever
Sagan's
did.
Fucking amazing. I think the most influential book I ever read by Sagan was The Demon Haunted Universe.
Yes,
the Demon Haunted World.
The Demon Haunted World.
Yeah.
Oh, Science is a Candle in the Dark. God, that's one of my favorites.
That's a good book.
And the other one that I really, really, really like is Shadows of Forgotten Ancestors. That one gets at some really, really, really deep shit.
Yeah. But I totally follow your line of reasoning, Jenner, where you're like, we're just a highly complex machine. We don't understand it. Yeah, certain things can affect the machine just in the way I can take this chemical that's completely separate from this chemical, mix them together, and there's a reaction. And then it's never happened before in reality until a human being went and did it, and now it's but it's happening, right? But I argue that the fact that there's something in the nature of reality that allows reactions to occur between things that may or may not have ever connected or met in history ever, yet there's some mechanic of reality that allows these reactions to occur.
Well, it's chemistry. This is what chemistry is. Everything that we know, every atom, every molecule in the cosmos came from the heart of a star. There are a million different combinations of all these things on the.
I'm just plugging them.
You're good, Isaac. That's a mechanistic approach to say something like, it came from this and did this and now we have this. Like that's like describing how a vehicle drives on the road. But when we start to get at the meaning behind the vehicle, when we get to the creator of the vehicle, when we get to the mind or the idea that gave birth to this thing that is a vehicle, and I'm not trying to get too far in the weeds on like the argument for or against God. I'm saying if we don't look at the mechanism behind reality, but we look at reality for what reality is, and we try to be mindful and present and just like truly experience it, it's a fucking mystery. And it's going to be a mystery for a long time. But trying to really get to the bottom of things without looking at reality mechanistically is one of my favorite pastimes. But it's one thing that I don't think most people can get past. Just in the same way that you said, it's just chemistry. It came from a star.
It's not just.
Sure.
At the ground level, that's what it is.
Yeah, at the ground level, it is.
On the fundamental particles and electricity level. Yeah.
So Ken Wilber, the guy who I've been talking about all night, and you say you don't like to listen to other people's ideas, but this is my idea as well. But I espouse Wilber here because I want other people to go read his books because I want people to read my books.
It's not that I don't like to listen to other people's ideas. It's that if I'm talking to a person, I want to talk.
Sure. So what you're saying, I agree with. The floor of reality, the foundation, is mechanistic, but the ceiling of reality, that which we're ascending towards or emerging towards, is a singularity of consciousness. And so consciousness is the ceiling and the floor. So at the same time that the floor is simply mechanism, it is mind. And it's a very hermetic idea. It's a very like ancient idea it's hard to articulate in a way that's meaningful to someone who thinks rationally, purely. And that's why I get hung up with people a lot in these discussions.
This is because you just kind of ascribed something to me that I wouldn't necessarily
not you
take on as a label, as a, like, it's just chemistry, it's just atoms. That clearly there's another part of the story there. We know just a fraction, but the fraction that we know, we got that on lock. But there's a gajillion other things that are a part of this equation. We all have to agree that 2 + 2 = 4. But that's, you know, when we're trying to calculate the trajectory of a raindrop, we have to invoke some much more complicated physics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And even more so, we're not even talking about something like a raindrop, but we're talking about an idea that doesn't really even exist in a way that's measurable through the tools that we have through our physics. Like, how do you measure government? How do you measure love? How do you measure consciousness? Like, how do you do any of that? And so I guess that's what I'm trying to get at when I say, like, smoke DMT. That's all I'm saying. But yeah.
Indeed.
Smoke DMT. Okay.
Wow, all right. I'm not signing on anytime soon, my own personal self, but kids, do what you love. Do your thing. Freedom. Hashtag America.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Well, let me
We're all part of the collective.
diverge on that for a moment and a little personal experience. Okay. Before a couple years ago, I was I would say that I was a spiritual person. Not purely a spiritual person, but I was a spiritual person, but not in like one that had done almost any drugs or any alcohol. But I had a lot of religious experiences and things along those lines. Now, a couple years ago, when I was going through some things in my life too, at the same time, going through some like breakups and also like at the same time, like a friend dying from cancer and all these things, then I'm like going through shit in my life and I'm like smoking more weed than I ever did, which was like not a big deal. But then like that's when I did Molly a couple times, which only was like 2 or 3 times ever a couple years ago. But
it's good though. Shit scoops your brain out, dude. Like fucking ice cream scoops every time you do it.
It almost felt like a Jenner was talking about, you know, blunt force things or change your name or changing your brain chemistry with
the wiring is there. You can go in there with a little scalpel, or you can go in there with a big caveman club and get similar effects.
Wilbur talks about it too. And sometimes you can accidentally develop pathology because you can actually achieve true mental states, but then you come back so quickly and you haven't integrated it in a way that's meaningful, and then you damage yourself like in multiple ways, mentally, physically. Yeah, you can do all sorts of bad shit. You can achieve a godly state that's like truly true, but then you come back and you're all fucked up.
Right.
Or maybe Isaac's getting to it right now where it actually helps. But.
Yeah. So what happened then, particularly, I don't know if it's the last time I did it or the middle of the 3, I think. But anyway, I had this experience where basically my brain started working differently thenceforth, which was... like
literally different, like literally actually different. Fucking different. Yep.
Like I had to deal with new hardware, basically.
Yeah, man. I fucked myself up, dude, for a while.
Yeah,
new operating system.
It wasn't. Nothing really was in a bad way. Like I didn't feel like I was retarded, to use Rick Sanchez vocabulary.
It happened to me. I went full retard for a little while, dude.
Okay. Well, congratulations on going there and making it back. I mean,
dude. People thought I was tweaked out of my mind for a little while, and I was probably.
Yeah, well, congratulations on going all the way there and all the way back. Not many people.
I need to protect my brain in a little soul cage. It's the mind is precious. I'm very apprehensive about exposing it to anything except like alcohol and ideas.
I was like older than you when I hardly did any drugs.
You're safe, Jenner. Yeah.
And then anyway, so I actually had like. Okay. Actually, I think how BJ and I got on this conversation a few days ago was I put up this mandala kind of thing that I just drew randomly in a few minutes, which is one thing that Carl Jung talks about a lot. And
the duality.
Was
it the dual thing where it was like you're this and you're not this, and this is being and this is non-being?
It was like void. It was like a no, I don't know if it was that one, but it was like the circle and a square and a pyramid and then a circle on top of that, and then talking about how
that's a like philosopher's stone. Holy shit!
Yeah.
I don't know if you even knew that you drew that.
Yeah, I draw that stuff all the time ever since that experience about 2 years ago. But
you literally drew the philosopher's stone.
Yeah,
the symbol.
So for it. Although that's it's an alchemical thing / religious thing that Carl Jung talks a lot about with.
Well, Jung is a Hermetic philosopher.
Yeah.
He took a lot of his ideas from Hermetism, but yeah,
right,
totally.
Well, but what that I was trying to do since then, and that's why I got into Jung. Like I'd never heard of a lot of, Jung or a lot of or Jordan Peterson or things since before about 2 years ago. Was from thenceforth I was trying to get to this kind of stuff, which is more of an integral Ken Wilber kind of thing, which is rather than having to say, okay, I'm in this camp, like I had gone to church for a while and I had gone to Buddhist temple for a while. And, I had done different, spiritual journeys over the years. And
wow.
One thing I'll say about that is, okay, and when I was going through this sort of experience, this like about a year and a half ago, I was like, maybe I'll even be an atheist or give that a shot. And I was listening to, what's his name? Dawkins' book. And then that's a book. I can't understand how anybody would ever.
Darwin's Black Box?
Yeah,
something like that.
No, the God Delusion. I was interested in it partly
God Delusion.
Partly because of that title, because I was like, oh, cool. I was kind of getting into the psychology type ideas. So I was like, cool, let me know about the delusional type ideas. So anyway, just like you find with the Sam Harris debate and everything else, the real issue isn't so much like if there's a guy in the sky with a beard, it's dogma. But the more you listen to him, the more you realize he's
a dogmatist.
He's super dogmatic.
Most institutional thinkers are. It's just the way we are.
Anyway, one of the things that kind of made me feel that way too is how a lot of people in his camp will say there's no such thing as a
dogmatic scientist.
No, one of the things that he said in his book is like there are no childhood Christians. They're all just doing what their parents tell them. And I grew up in
clones.
In a sense, everybody is born an inquisitive idiot, atheist that just needs the process of discovering God is a personal one.
Well,
and it could take years.
I largely agree about
that in my book. I want to talk about that later. Yeah.
My point, which is I think interesting on that line, is that my dad was a atheist, probably scientific materialist, although he didn't he talked to me sometimes on those lines, but he didn't try to push those ideas on me. And then my mom was Christian, but wishy-washy, so to speak, I guess.
Sure. Unorthodox.
Well, no, I mean it's just not.
There are 5 real Christians on the planet, guys, who actually take that shit seriously. Most of them are just culturally. Yes, I do this.
She wasn't super into it or pushing it, so to speak. So anyway, then I got into spirituality through the church as a child, like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, and I would sometimes make my family go because it was like a poor, broken, kind of fucked up family, and I would push my family to do those things, and it was very helpful because I have 3 or 4 older brothers and a couple younger ones, and the older ones I got all addicted to heroin and some other things like that.
Sorry to cut you off. I got to bounce right now, I guess, but so I got to help with the kid. And he's like,
Sure.
I guess he woke up. But I want to come back and talk about like your religious experience versus like how you became religious or how you got to where you are. And I'll share my story too. And I want to hear it though. And I don't want to hear it here when I listen to the podcast again. I want to come and have a conversation with you about it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
But I gotta go.
Thing, man.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
It was fun, you guys.
Nice meeting you.
Wrap it up to say that I basically come into the Ken Wilber kind of camp, so to speak. But anyway, it's cool having you here, and
man.
Take care of your family business, and
see
you another time.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for letting me come and talk to you guys. Jenner, you had mentioned really fast something about like blank slateism and having to like discover God yourself, and like every person kind of comes and has to discover whatever that meaning is for themselves. I want to talk about that
not
another
completely
time.
Blank, but
like, that's why
it is like, a personal journey. It's you use the shiniest rocks that you can pick up along the way that come from our ancestors. There's value there. I
want to talk about that with you in the future. I want to discuss it specifically.
Come, motherfucker, come do that on Mindwave. We'll get you in the philosophy series, which is changing names. It's fine. It's
cool, man.
It's gonna
be
great,
down.
But yeah.
And then Isaac, I want to talk to you again later about your experiences, man. For sure. Hey.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Again, let me know when you have time. And
you guys can continue. For sure.
Jenner will continue at least for a few minutes. But
I'm here. I'm up now.
Okay.
I fucking pissed me there. I passed out on accident. But you were right in the middle of I was right there with you. I was like, okay, no, keep going on this. I need to hear the rest of this.
He went over his time. Although, okay, so sort of to wrap that up, maybe he can watch the end of this later, or we'll catch up another time when he's got time with his, between his family and all the other responsibilities, whatever. So it's kind of been a lifelong journey. Okay. And I wasn't trying to go on too long of a spiel, but I was trying to make the point that what I've learned in my journey, I guess, even from childhood, whether that's 10, 11 years old, trying to say, not go down without getting into too much detail, not going down the path of, some of my older family that, older siblings that got, at least one of them messed up on heroin, but thank the universe he's got his stuff together now. And then my younger ones, kind of the opposite, more fundamentalist path. So it's kind of funny too, because on one hand you got like my dad's more of a atheist, maybe scientific materialist sort of. Then my mom was kind of a Christian, but she changed churches a little bit, whatever. And so I was kind of between those two worlds. And then my older siblings, which were actually half siblings from my mom's first marriage, they kind of went down a different path. And so, which is why I was somewhat being a leader in my family when I'm even like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-ish years old, like saying, hey, let's do this and that, which the utility of it, I think really helped, where if I didn't get into that, which the church, there's a lot of different church type backgrounds that it was more of a spiritual type than just like a fundamentalist type anyway. But going down that more spiritual path probably saved me from going down a dangerous, destructive path that I could have. And so I guess everybody's got their journey, and sometimes we don't know it because more people have a more their journey seems more laid out for them, and that like their family's just this way or that way, or their community's just this way or that way, and they go with the flow. But maybe because of the certain backgrounds that I had gone through, I'd always kind of been in those different worlds. And then actually I've been divorced for a number of years now, but I was married for a number of years before that. And my wife at the time was a practicing Buddhist from Korea. And so I had to go to her Buddhist temple, which I actually was interested in anyway.
Wait, specify. Which one? There
Which
are two. Korea. There are two different Koreas. Which
You will
Korea?
never be North Korean. You don't have to specify unless I think there's only
Right.
one North Korean.
They don't let
in
people out of North Korea, right? That's not a thing.
I think
They don't
there's
get to
only
leave.
one Korean in America, and her book's in my cupboard cabinet right now. Yeah, there's only one maybe two, one or two North Koreans in America. So everybody will be from South Korea. Otherwise, that you would normally meet.
That's a joke.
So yeah, maybe. Okay, so my point on all of that before BJ got us down the whole psychedelic path was that
Did I do? I think that was me. I think that I think I might have lit that fuse that became that whole. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa.
watch
I was
back.
not ready for that. It's fine.
Okay,
Don't do drugs, kids.
don't do drugs. If there's any children watching, you know what though? I will say this on that note.
Jesus.
I think it's an interesting idea to not do drugs. To definitely tell kids don't do drugs, but
Do ideas.
we'll do ideas. But I feel like it was an interesting experience that I did just about nothing until I was like your age or just even like maybe a year or two older than you are right now. And because what that did is it made my mind sort of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's hard to put it in a perspective because before that I was very spiritual, having a lot of religious experiences and being somewhat philosophical. But then after some, maybe one or two, I see it's not psychedelic. And that's why I was talking about the, some of those things that I wrote is because sometimes those come almost as like, definitely not psychedelic, but they're like images that come from the mind, but it's just conceptualizing how to best understand things that are hard to understand, like consciousness and these things as far as how we conceptualize an idea of God, whether there is one or not, and how that we would interact with it, whether it's an actual reality or a metaphorical reality or, those kind of things. And just to even be able to better understand consciousness and what matters. So we act more like Sam Harris and not Rick Sanchez, which is like our original point a little bit today and more yesterday. So yeah, cool. We've been all over the place again.
I'm fine with being Rick. I don't give a fuck. Let's see that ass, bitch. It's Leia's here.
Yeah. Well,
She wanted to come say hi. Say hi, Leia. Where's Barry?
He's on the floor. He's sleeping. I'll let him sleep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Leia wants to come say
hi. How many pounds do you think she is?
Oh gosh, I don't know. She's a runt though. She's supposed to be really big. She's a pit bull boxer mix, and she's like 2 now, so she should be like twice her size. So she's a little runty retard, but I love her.
Runty retard. Hey Rick, you're not supposed to say retarded.
Well, that's retarded.
Yeah, it's gonna make me retarded. All right. Wow. Okay, we got all over the place with our daily discussion now.
Did you just it's fine.
Well, it's not quite daily. It's daily this one time because daily in terms of being 2 days in a row. This, I think, the only time I've done it 2 days in a row. Definitely not tomorrow, but probably Thursday as well, just because Jeff was going to try to get on today and he couldn't. So we'll include him on.
I would actually like to kind of get you guys in my house, maybe, to come over to my show and like you specifically, Isaac. I think I think we should start that with a one-on-one. I would like you specifically to come over to Mindwave, have a one-on-one with me, and launch the Daily Archetype as a series on Mindwave that can also act as a conduit, a wormhole over to your universe so that people can engage more meaningfully.
Yeah, if it will get, I don't care. I'm not proprietary. I'm white label. I was having an idea today of like, it's funny because this is an idea that I was like dwelling on. I was like, when I was like tripping 2 years ago on my like back to my story, how I got on that tangent. And I'm like tripping, listening to Jay-Z and some rap music, and they're saying a lot of the N-word. And I'm like, I wish there was. Well, no, but I was saying, I wish there was a better word that we can all kind of call each other another version of the N-word.
I like bitch.
Okay, bitch.
Bitch. Yes. Bitch is great.
Okay.
I think that's the safest one.
Well, I'm not talking about in a PC kind of way. I'm talking about like to be able to like, hey brother, like my sibling from another parent, not paternally. I wish there was, or whatever. I wish there was
an edgy term of endearment.
It doesn't even have to be.
For us, I think it's bro. I think the only one we're allowed to use is cisgendered white men. I think it's just bro. I think that's all we're allowed to say.
I was thinking for a minute like white, but I don't want it to be white. I want it to be all inclusive.
Bro is universal. I have girlfriends who are my bros, not girlfriend like that, but female friends who are my bros. I think bro's a good one. Bro and bitch. Bros and bitches.
All right, bitch, bro. BJ is missing out on the bitch bro conversation.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. That really requires its own. Like I would love to get him on, but that really I think is going to require like a one-on-one. One of the reasons I don't really like doing these live streams a whole lot is because they go too fast. They're all over the place, and they're just like I want to slow it down. I'd rather like, hey, come into my cave and smoke a bowl, and we'll cuddle type of thing, one-on-one.
I'm basically figuring this out too. Honestly, I'm just kind of like, oh, like I'm gonna see if I can find the first one I did with Connor. Like, I don't know if it was the one you were in or one. Maybe it's the one that I first did with you. But I'm like, how's this work? Ah! And then kind of after that, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. By the middle of that, about when you got on, and I was like, my microphone's not working. And then I eventually figured it out, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I kind of feel like a boomer. Or is that a boomer that? But I need to sit down and figure out how this technology stuff works so I can integrate it more in my life, because it's healthy for myself and the world to do this kind of stuff.
Absolutely, man. And I've been spending, I don't even know how long now, building my own little castle in the sky over here, on my own little platform, in my own way to do this with as many people as possible and empower as many people as possible. Over at mindwave.media. But that's a website. It's not .com, it's .media. Yeah, man. I really need to get you in there.
Yeah.
Not that there should be somewhat of a sense of urgency, like not like ASAP, but like I do need, because I have a million fucking things on my desk. Metaphorically, my production desk will looks like an episode of Hoarders. It's bad. But I do need to get you on the show, because we've done a few live streams, but I've never had you kind of like in the hot seat as a guest on Mindwave, and I need to do that.
I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that talks sometimes in text and or sounds. So that's my whole thing. But I guess that's the scientific materialist way to look at it. But yeah. I'll do it. Just for sure. We'll arrange the time and make it happen.
I don't know, man. I fucking love you, man. This is what it's all about. This is the mission in life.
We need to get each other in Mortys, because if we have our own Mortys, then like you're saying, you have that 14-year-old that'll be your little producer.
My social media bitch to be like, hey, go put this on Twitter or TikTok or whatever the fuck the kids are using these days. I don't have the energy for that shit. But dude, go do the take this and go do the hashtags and the flippity flops and the gifs and all the rest of it. Because goddamn, I would love to have a whole army behind Mindwave doing this shit. Be like, you said something funny, I'm gonna make a meme out of that. And I would be like, fucking thank you.
Thanks, Morty.
Please meme me. I have one of the raunchiest senses of humor, and I am totally fine with people shitting on me. I kind of like that, frankly, in a roasty way. Okay, don't be mean, motherfuckers. Don't be mean.
Don't hurt my feelings too much.
No, I have a very
there's no
as was kind space. As was kind of alluded to earlier. God, I'm in a bit of a fugue state. The self-worth question. I think this is probably a conversation that I was having with Jesse around recognizing one's worth in the world, and it doesn't have to be an egotistical I'm better. It really had nerd goggles. I love the nerd goggles. Do the nerd goggles.
I like them. It's just the reflection.
Yeah, I have the anti-reflective.
Oh, that's what I need. I need to spend
on mine.
$20. Yeah,
but I did not splurge for the transitions, and I really regret it. Every other pair of glasses I've had for like the past 10 years have had transitions, and these ones don't. And I live in the middle of the fucking desert, and I go out in the middle of the day, and I'm like, horrible.
Well, I've had this pair of glasses for, I don't know, a few months. I forget how long, less than a year, maybe almost a year. Yeah, almost a year. But that's the longest I've been able to keep a pair. So I don't want to splurge because, I usually lose them. So maybe now that I've learned the responsibility, I'll splurge on my next pair instead of this weirdness.
Yeah, I've been wearing glasses since I was 2, and I've always treated them like my body. I treat them like shit. But no, I am getting better about them. I put them in a case. I wipe them off. I do the little.
Oh, you're so mature.
The little thingy, but my prescription is bad. Like for me to get a new pair of glasses is like $300 minimum to get a new pair of glasses for me because my eyes are fucked up. So yeah, I've had to slowly learn to take better.
You mean the lenses and the frames, and the everything?
Usually the frames are free, but because of how much I have to spend on the lenses, my eyes are super fucked up. When I was a kid, the lenses were like this thick, like big Coke bottle 90s. So they would like take up the whole face and like make my eyes like gigantic.
Oh, like that one guy. Okay.
Oh, okay. Totally. Dude. Have you seen my stapler? Totally. Yeah. Totally. I had the stapler guy glasses. If it's my stapler and I brought it from my home. That's my stapler. I had those glasses for a really long time.
And then it actually blows up the building in the end. Spoiler alert. I'm trying to remember to speak closer to the microphone because.
Do you have a live monitor? Can you hear yourself, or are you just hearing me?
I don't know how to have I don't know how to have a live monitor.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
PC.
Okay. So for future reference, in your are you on Windows 10?
Maybe.
Ugh, God, Windows has gotten so gross. It used to just be super easy. Go into Control Panel and go to Sound and record whatever. You can actually turn it on. Live monitoring. I believe in Windows 10, you don't use the Settings app. You go to the Control Panel, which will be a little more difficult to find. But in settings, you can come down, and I think it's sound, and under the recording tab, you can actually turn on
I should
live monitoring, so you can hear
just
yourself.
I know,
This
just
is my,
like you, if we're right in the microphone, it's really good quality. But like I was listening to the one we did yesterday a little bit, and because I was like back here, then it was really echoey. Like it sounded like I was in a hallway or a gymnasium.
that is my number one recommendation to anybody trying to do this work. Because
so
it is
hard.
work. It is extremely valuable work to society. Not just, it's valuable to us.
Aliens
because we love it.
1,000 years.
The digital archaeologists of the future will look back on this very
or it's
in awe.
Get shot through the space somehow, so it might be shot into other planets that register it someday. And like
I'm gonna try before, because I thought about this for a hot minute. I have to find a way to beam Mindwave into space. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Because podcasts, we're not.
Because if somebody watches this and they're somehow at some point using something that has to jump over a satellite, and then that jumps from the satellite to wherever, and then in so doing, it will hit the Earth, and some of it will bounce back into space, and some of it will miss the Earth. But I want
like a big fucking dedicated satellite dish in the middle of the Nevada desert. That's the sole job of this thing is just to beam that shit directly to fucking Alpha Centauri.
Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, like really. Oh Jesus.
Was that on the Joe Rogan? No, was it? Yeah, that was. Did you watch that Joe Rogan clip I sent you on your thing? On your group thing?
Yeah, about the Sphinx and yeah.
Well, he was talking about the Ku. I forget the name of the clan. The Monkey Clan or something, and they believe that they're from. He was trying to say the way that Joe remembered it.
Sirius or something.
He thought that we came from Mars, but the one they looked it up, we're actually, according to this tribe in Africa, like the Wakanda tribe or whatever, that they thought. It's not Wakanda, but it's something.
No, it's tip of my tongue. I can't remember either.
They thought that we were from Siri, which that's different from Alpha Centauri, right? Yeah.
Sirius is Sirius, like the dog. That is XM radio. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky. If I'm not, I should get that right. Sirius? I am an astro nerd. I think Sirius is the brightest star.
Is it Sirius or just Siri? Now I'm confused. But
Sirius is a star. Ceres, Ceres, is a dwarf planet now that is in the same category as Pluto. However, it was a planet for a very, very long time. It is the largest asteroid.
No. You have to almost keep your Rick and Morty like lexicon, because now Rick and Morty references, especially because I just caught up on like the last couple seasons, and or season and a half, the Pluto episode where Jerry got abducted by aliens because he was trying to say that Pluto was a planet. And then he got taken to Pluto, where they're trying to convince everybody that they're still a planet, when they actually downsized themselves to like a dwarf star or dwarf comet or whatever the case. And it's like this big conspiracy on the dwarf. Anyway,
dwarf planet, lowercase p. Big planets, we get a big P. Earth gets a big E. It's a capital P planet with a big P. And still there are the other ones are proper. It's Ceres, Pluto, Ceres, Haumea, Makemake, Eris, all of these other kind of tiny worlds. There's tens of thousands of tiny worlds the size of Pluto in our solar system, kids. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Tens of thousands of them. And lots of them are big and round, and they look like worlds. They look like they are worlds. They are worlds each on their own.
It is still up for debate. There are a lot of serious not that kind of serious, but real astrophysicists and everything else that still want to classify Pluto as a planet. So it's still
retarded.
it's still up for debate. Well, a book on tape that I would recommend if you have the time is The Black Hole War. I think it's called. Yeah, The Black Hole War. But he doesn't spend a lot of time defending the planethood of Pluto, but that is a claim that he makes in the book. And most of the book is just talking about astrophysics type things in general. And this guy who had a long, ongoing, decades-long debate with Stephen Hawking, and I think he eventually won the debate which the debate was basically on the nature of black holes and if information could disappear forever, and maybe also included the theory of if a black hole could just appear out of nowhere and disappear. Anyway, I haven't read/heard that book in a while, but it's a good one.
I'm pretty sure Stephen Hawking won that argument.
No, I think
for Hawking radiation, which is a fascinating phenomenon, which we will dig into on Mindwave at some point. Hawking radiation is fascinating. I'm 100 episodes in, and I just the other day, explained what the fuck a black hole is, which is bizarre because I started this as an astro nerd, and it took me forever to get into fucking astro shit. On Pluto, though, no serious scientist is trying to reclassify that as a planet for the basic reason alone that if you do that, you have to then include every other object like it. They are all planets too, and kids in school are going to be learning about 10,000 objects, not 8 or 9. Eris,
I don't know. I forget his argument, and I think I didn't really care that much. I think his argument was something along the lines of it's because it's in an orbit as if it were a planet. It's like acting as if God exists. it's in its own orbit as you got caught in an orbit as if it were a planet. Although I don't know if I completely see that reasoning. Just like Halley's Comet is almost in its
Halley. Sorry,
okay.
it's double
Halley's
L.
Okay,
Halley. It's 2 L's. Everybody gets that wrong. It's not your fault. I just have to put it out there. It's Halley with 2 L's. Yep.
All right. Well, that is almost in a planetary orbit. It's just going on the other axis. I don't know if you say the other axis, but
elliptical. I think it's kind of the degree towards the ecliptic if the planets are rotating this way. Halley's kind of at one of these really weird orbits. It's highly elliptical, very stretched out, super ovally.
Well, they're all elliptical, but Halley's is this way rather than this way.
It is on a regular cycle. I believe Halley's Comet is the orbital rotational period is 76 years.
Something like
that. I think I'm not 100%. It's Jamie.
Right.
Jamie, I don't have a Jamie. It's fine.
Morty.
But it passed. This is a beautiful tangent. It passed. It was in the sky. Halley's Comet. This is a very cool fucking thing. Halley's Comet was in the sky when I was born, and I will still be alive the next time it shows up, and I have something really fucking cool. I'm gonna show you.
Okay.
Dude, keep talking.
Okay, Halley's Comet. I'm going to live. That's why I made it a goal, and I've got to start taking better care of myself. So I live to see Halley when she comes back again. I think in 2060 and 2061 is when she's coming.
2060 something. Yes, I got this. I got this from my grandma, who I never met. This is
that looks like the microscope that makes you retarded.
the Return of Halley's Comet.
Okay.
1985, 1986. It only comes around every so once in a while, but this is cool actually a duplicate. I had to buy a replacement to get the lenses because this is not the one that my grandma gave me or left to me. But I needed the lenses, so I bought this one on eBay so that I could take the lenses out of it. to put in my childhood one. But yeah, no, Halley's Comet, it's a special thing for me. I'm hoping to be here next time it comes around. I really, really fucking am.
Let's do it. Let's see if we can live that long.
Star Party.
Star Party.
We will all be downloaded into sexy robot bodies by then, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
No, that's not that far. No, I don't think by then. That's kind of pushing it.
No, I don't. I really don't think it is.
Well, okay.
Think of the 80s and 90s. We didn't foresee any of this shit. We didn't foresee the possibility of being able to do this. Talk to each other in video and studio quality audio at the speed of light across the planet.
We would have a flying car, and there was other technology that we probably predicted that
we were supposed to get hoverboards and jetpacks and all that shit. We didn't get that shit, but we got a lot of it. Do you have any idea how fucking magical this thing is? This fucking thing that everybody has in their pocket.
Although I'm wondering if there will be some technology like that we don't foresee, and then we're like,
of course we
forgot
won't
to put our brains and bodies and our bodies and download our brains or whatever.
This conversation will sound so cute to the people who have the technology that doesn't exist yet that we can't even imagine. Because, I mean, like, it's something like the cell phone. Star Trek saw this coming. This is like a communicator. It's just a beam me up or whatever. They saw that coming.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of our technology, people they saw it coming.
I remember it was
like
such a big
cracking the human genome, understanding DNA on a crazy level where we can manipulate the fabric of life. That wasn't really foreseen.
Although we barely started
cracking the atom open. It's like.
Do we know what they're doing at CERN, by the way? I almost got in that yesterday, but I think I dodged that bullet. But
I don't know what's going on at CERN.
Is it classified? No, but, okay. So CERN, they're basically trying to split the atom again, like split it even deeper than before.
See, you said this to me, and I didn't do the fact check thing, which I should have. I should have researched this.
Yeah, when are you gonna get?
But I did not.
We need to get some more of these. They took 1,000 of them in the multiverse.
I need to pee. Are we going or are we wrapping?
We can take a quick break and then we'll see.
I love it.
We'll probably wrap it up after a little bit, but
whatever. I'm totally fine going however long. I just like my bladder.
Quick break and then we'll see what happens. We'll probably just go for a little bit longer.
It's cute. I love you guys, and if you're here watching, thank you. Yay! No, it's great.
Cool,
it's fantastic. Thanks for watching. You're in. I'm gonna go do that.
Okay, do that.
I'm gonna come back and turn my mic down so you can't hear me pee in the toilet. Okay, turn my mic back up. So real quick, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm about to hit episode 100 of Mindwave, and I wanted 99 to be special too. And one of the big things I've been trying to one of the big things I've been wanting to get off the ground is Jesse Rogers' Resurgent Us podcast. So I had a conversation with him earlier today that we were calling episode 99 of Mindwave and episode 1 of Resurgent Us, and it really, it's not it's not episode 1, it's episode 0, because episode 1 he should be in the captain's chair, you know. So I've been trying to think of how, once I hit 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, what are those going to be? I think the first handful of them need to be the other shows that are going to exist on this show. So I'm working on Jesse's theme song right now. I really needed to get him back in my earballs so that I can get into the zone, because I totally fucked myself on the creative thing there, because I did the artist thing. I went way too deep.
People do that on Fiverr or sites like that pretty well and cheap.
I need to take my time with it, and make it special. So when Resurgent Us, actually, with episode 1 of Resurgent Us as a series on my show is going to come. It's going to come, and it's going to be hosted by him. So what I want to do with you is one get you on Mindwave as a guest.
Sure.
First, to introduce the concept of what you're doing, and then
I don't know what I'm doing, but
that'll be, well, no, none of us know what we're doing, man. Yeah. That's the beauty of it. And that'll be episode 0. And then when we take it to episode 1 of your show, you're going to be the host. Like, we're going to totally flip it. Yeah, it's going to be that. It's going to be,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
It's going to be that, kids. So, start thinking about maybe rattling it around in the back of your brain, as what would, if the Daily Archetype were going to be a show, what would episode 1 be like? So maybe we'll talk about that when I have you as a guest on Mindwave, but then I want to have you as a host on Mindwave as well. I want to bring Jesse on as a host to host an episode with his own theme song, his own music, his own everything, on Mindwave. Same with Boone Hem from Far Out Wisdom. Same with Fred from Fred's Front Porch.
Man.
I got to get my shit together. I got to put it in a backpack and fucking take it to the shit store and sell it. Put it in a shit museum. Just get your shit together, Jenner. I am getting my shit together. But yes, I would like 2 things to happen. Please come
back with a speech.
Please come be a guest.
Inspirational peeing. Okay, so all right, I'll do episode 0 and then episode 1.
Yes. I'm gonna help you.
Are we done with our show and we should just go back into the green room, or I think
I have no idea. I don't do these live stream.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna end the live stream and then we'll like continue talking.
What did you drunk philosophy? What? Philosophy with BJ? I was just looking at what you call the
code. Typo? I might have. I did.
Drunk a lot.
Philosophy. But I guess I made a typo.
That's perfect. And this is so weird because I was like, I am totally gonna have a drunk philosophy series on my show, and
if there's drunk history, there needs to be drunk philosophy.
Yes, and drunk science. Drunk science is gonna be super fucking fun. But Boone Hem started a drunk philosophy series on her show, and I'm like, well,
does she call it that?
Yeah, it's Drunk Philosophy. She has her own Drunk Philosophy series.
Mine's not Drunk Philosophy. It's Drunk Philosophy.
Philosophy.
Yeah.
It's
Mine's way better.
It's fucking great.
Yeah.
But no, it just I think in terms of alchemy, alcohol and philosophy are a magical mixture. They create some beautiful fucking things. That's Drunk Philosophy is not mine or hers or yours. It's all of ours. It's the Agora. It's the
she
bathhouse.
Can have Drunk Philosophy. I have Drunk Philosophy. Sorry, Boone, if you ever hear this, Drunk Philosophy is way better than Drunk Philosophy because it's drunk from the beginning.
It's I love this. Yeah.
Drunk
but yeah, let's continue chatting, but we will cut it here for the audience. We've been going for 2.5 hours, which is
recording.
I have to do this myself because I'm like,
but yeah,
I love this process, but I understand the attention span economy is like we need to crunch shit down to make it edible for the other mammals who are trying to absorb it.
Space monkeys.
Yes, the space monkeys, man. We are the most advanced species of space monkey in this pocket of the universe, motherfuckers. And we can do better. And that is my mantra.
Bye.
Peace, motherfuckers.